Welcome to Caucus Connections, a podcast with the Kentucky House Majority Caucus.
Welcome to Caucus Connections. We're here with Representative Chris Fugate of the 84th District. That includes Perry County and part of Harlan. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good, John. How are you today?
I am all right. Before we get into the main part of the interview, I want to ask you, you have a unique perspective as a pastor, a former state trooper, and as a legislator. I think somebody last week called that the trifecta, as you have a unique perspective for a lot of the things that are going on. How are you holding up through all this?
As I look at the country, of course, being a former trooper, I loved every minute, every day that I went to work. I enjoyed it every day, and I still miss it today. What's sad to see is that many times one person or one bad person, one bad police officer, people lets that define the entire police across the nation. And just like you can't say all troopers or all police officers are good because of one person, you can't say all police officers are bad because of one person.
Right.
And so what hurts me the most, I guess, is I know the sacrifice that police officers make. I know the long hours that they spend away from their families. I know the days they miss holidays and birthdays, and because they're out working, sit down to eat, get called out to go to a domestic or to a wreck, and they always go. And I guess what bothers me the most is to see the hurt in their eyes. That the people that they've given their lives to help, they're not appreciated a lot of times. Now, let me say this: there are a lot of good people out there that support the police. So we can't let a bunch that are disrespectful to our country and to the police define everybody. The very same way. So as a trooper, that's what hurts me the most. As a pastor, when I see people doing the things that they're doing, to me, it's a cry for spiritual help. There are a lot of people looking for peace and happiness and all those things, and they're looking in the wrong places. And so as a pastor, it breaks my heart for society to see that there's a lot of young people who are without maybe the presence of a dad in their home, that really are struggling to make it through life because they need that influence. And so as a pastor, as police officers, I think it's our duty to try to reach out to people like that and try to be a good influence, a positive influence on them.
What are some of the things you're hearing from either from your congregation or your constituents about the situation we're in right now, just in general?
Well, most of my constituents and back home, they're great supporters of the police. In the church that I pastor, Gospel Light Baptist Church in Hazard, we have troopers, retired deputy sheriffs, retired police officers, active police that are members of our church. My constituents, and for the most part back home, everybody is they're supportive of the police and supportive of my career as a trooper, and they're just great.
Today we want to talk about the Kentucky Mountain Regional Recreational Authority. What does connecting those ATV trails in eastern Kentucky mean for that part of the state?
Well, it means, and I always refer to the Hatfield-McCoy Trail System in West Virginia.
Right, and we'll be talking about that too.
Okay.
That's a good example of kind of what we're thinking about with this.
That's right. And when I ran for office in the very beginning, I was contacted by the Perry County Emergency Management Director, Jerry Stacy, and he said, they've got this idea, this trail system in West Virginia. He said, I think it would be great for Kentucky. And so, to be honest with you, I was a little bit skeptical at first, but we passed House Bill 156 in the 2017 legislature, and then we passed House Bill 249 in 2019 legislature, and it kind of established the Kentucky Mountain Regional Recreation Authority, and it's patterned after Hatfield-McCoy Trail System. And so I went and visited with Jeffrey Lusk, who's the executive director of Hatfield-McCoy Trail System, and several of our people from southeast Kentucky, because this is really more than just the 84th district. So I went to Hatfield-McCoy Trail System, and at that time they had 8 counties that were involved in their trail system. And they have like 6 different trails under one trailhead, or a trail authority. And so when I went there, it's a coal country, just like southeast Kentucky. The loss of jobs is everywhere, just like southeast Kentucky. The terrain is just like southeast Kentucky. I mean, it's the Appalachian Mountains.
Right.
And so when I went there, I met people that have benefited, local people that benefited with building housing, such as, cabins, turning their garages into cabins, little restaurants that have exploded over there, and campgrounds that people have built. There's one particular campground, Twin Hollow Campground over there, that the guy's built 11 cabins. He's got 16 employees, 10 part-time or 10 full-time, 6 part-time. He rents side by sides. He's got like a restaurant up on top, like a dairy bar. And it's on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. 400 people in Gilbert, West Virginia.
Wow.
And so when I saw what they were doing, I was like, man, Kentucky, we can do this, and we can do it better. And so what the legislation does, it connects, or it allows up to 30 counties to be connected together by trails. And so the board was established. We do have the board in place, and it's just going to be a great thing for southeast Kentucky.
It's not just the ATV trails themselves, which would bring in a lot of people, don't get me wrong, but also the things that you can build up around the trails, correct?
Right.
So I give an example, I don't know if you ever went to Tombstone Junction.
I did.
There
I did.
years ago at Cumberland
Yes.
Falls. It was one of those things that was built up around that.
Right.
Things like that, you could even look at a mini Dollywood type situation or something for Kentucky with those connected to those ATV trails, correct?
Right, that's correct. The last year, so just to have trails, that's not going to bring any money, just to have trails. But last year, the economic impact in West Virginia was $38 million into those 8 counties in West Virginia. So if you took any 8 counties in southeast Kentucky and said, we're going to drop $38 million in your 8 counties, that's really big for southeast Kentucky. And so what we want to do is to see local people build cabins, build campgrounds on their property, right, to be able to advertise that on Facebook, social media, ever how they can advertise it, to draw people from Michigan, from all over the country. West Virginia had 56,000 riders last year. 56,000 riders, and 85% of those riders were from outside the state of West Virginia. So they turned away 20,000 riders because of housing. They didn't have any place for them to stay. So if you saw in the long run, if you connected Hatfield-McCoy with Spearhead Trail System, which is in Virginia, which was also patterned after Hatfield-McCoy, and if you combined their trail system with Kentucky trail system, Tennessee's developing trail system, and we could have the biggest trail systems in all of the United States, and draw people to the mountains, where I believe, John, is the most beautiful part of the country.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too, is it's almost like from the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
That's right.
And I think you're seeing with that model in West Virginia, that all these other areas, again, how much money has been lost in those areas, how much of the income has been lost in those areas, the coal jobs and things along those lines, is to have this. It would be of course, it wouldn't completely replace that revenue, but certainly any bit helps, doesn't it?
That's right. If you go back in time, the coal job, we didn't just lose coal jobs, but we lost coal severance money coming back to our counties.
Right.
We lost garages, tire shops, mechanics. We lost more than just the coal jobs. And in my district,
whole infrastructures for towns. Really.
Right. That's exactly right. In my town, in my district, we lost other types of jobs too. I mean, we had 2 wood factories that were there that employed probably 350 people combined. We lost a clothing factory. We lost a plastic factory. We lost those jobs in addition to. So what the trail system, and the trail systems are not the fix-all for Southeast Kentucky.
Right.
But it's a big step in a big direction. And what I like about it, probably the most, is number one, you've got counties and county judges, mayors that are all working together on this. You've got Democrat, Republican, you've got all kinds of different people that see the vision for this and are making it work. And we've had support from the whole legislature too. We've had not just from Southeast Kentucky, but all across the state. The representatives and senators have, I believe, seen the vision for what we're trying to do, and they've supported it.
Well, because it benefits the entire state, really.
That's right.
When one of us does well, we all do well.
That's right.
It's a bit of a morale booster too, isn't it?
It is.
In a way.
Yes, it is.
Senator Wheeler testified in the July meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Transportation the other day about legislation that would give ATVs a little more leeway out on the highway. Tell me a little bit about that, how that will help as well.
Okay, like we said, the trail, just having the trails is not good enough. So the people that come in to ride the trails, we have to give them access into our small towns. I'm not talking about the major interstates or the big highways in the county. Sure. But if I've got a trail that comes out in the backside of Harlan to the little town of Everett, and Everett and some of those towns are already doing it. They've already passed ordinances where they're allowing that. And they can come down to the local restaurants and eat. They can come down to the local mini marts and fill up with gas, buy snacks. That's where the counties will benefit from it the most.
That's the economic boost there.
That's exactly right. Because according to the study that Hatfield-McCoy Systems did, most people spend in excess of $250 per person. So when you get 56,000 riders coming in spending in excess of $250 per person, and some up to $500-$600. So we want people to come to Southeast Kentucky, ride through the mountains and the hollers and all that of East Kentucky, but we want them to be able to come out into the towns, to be able to eat, and of course, there'll be restrictions on them. They can't
Sure.
just a 10-year-old boy won't be able to ride a four-wheeler up and down the streets of Hazard. But I think it's big for the economic boost to be able to come down into our towns to spend their money and to stay in motels. You think about the state park, Buckhorn Lake State Park loses about $800,000 a year. So what if we advertise Buckhorn Lake State Park as a place where you bring your ATVs, we're going to put you on a trail and you'll be able to ride through 5 or 6 counties. It's going to boost our state park. I just believe it's a big shot in the arm for Southeast Kentucky.
Well, and if you think about it too, and this might have been brought up in the meeting as well, ATVs aren't cheap. The folks that have them for recreation and that are using them for recreation, they usually have, like you said, money to spend.
That's right.
And on average, they're going to spend a lot of money in our towns. If you look at again where I'm from in Pulaski, Lake Cumberland,
right.
Look at how much business comes off of the lake.
Right.
That's just that isn't related to the
That's
lake,
right.
but it's from the especially during the tourist season. And this could be really a similar situation, couldn't it? They come
right.
down there for the trails, but then the surrounding communities will benefit from the tourists that are there.
That's right. And if you take your Lake Cumberland, how many people come there from Ohio?
Right.
And from other states. And so that's outside money. We can't survive just in Southeast Kentucky just on Southeastern
right.
Kentucky money. So we've got the resources. We've got elk down there. We've got a lot of wildlife. There's fishing ponds all across the mountains where they've reclaimed the coal mine lands. There's just all kinds of things. Beautiful country, and so we're going to advertise that and market it for people to come to enjoy the mountains of Southeast Kentucky.
Well, and that's it too. When they show up to these trails and then they go back and tell their friends and neighbors about it in other states, then they're going to want to come here too.
That's right. Last Saturday, a group from our church, we went out riding Saturday. Yeah. And there was about 12 ATV side-by-sides of us that went out. I would say that we probably passed or parked and talked to 200 to 300 other side-by-sides. There was a man and his family that had come from Lima, Ohio, last weekend to come to the mountains to ride. He just said, man, we come down here. He said, everything's tied up in the cities. And he said, we come to the mountains and everybody's friendly, everybody's waving. You break down, somebody stops to help you. And he had his boys and his son-in-laws and all of them there with him, and that's what we want to see. We want to see people from other towns come and enjoy. We rode about almost 70 miles, and we went from Knott County into a portion of McGoffin, Floyd, Breathitt County, Perry County, back to Knott. And it was just an amazing day, and a lot of great fun, and a family activity.
Well, and you talked about taking your church group, and then these folks wanting to get out of the city to come here. Talk to me about we've been talking about ATV trails, we've been talking about these things. To you, what does that mean being out in nature like that?
Well, I mean, John, I had my wife and daughter with me on the side by side, and just to see. The Bible says that the heavens declare His glory. And when you get out in them mountains and you see the creeks, you see the wildlife, you see God everywhere you look. Sometimes we get so caught up with our life that we're so busy. We get emails, we get text messages, we got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got all those distractions. And we live our life kind of with our head down. And so getting out in the mountains helps you to put that stuff away. And just to think about, man, God made this place. He put us here in these mountains to enjoy this. And so to get out with our family, I mean, we took snacks, we stopped and eat, beside the trail. All of us got together and then after it was over, we all had a cookout and did a fireworks activity, show, because it's July the 4th.
Right.
And so we celebrate. But when you get out away from the busyness of the world and you slow down in your mind and you get to see God, and you get to talk to the Lord about things. Just thank Him for what He's done. We're a blessed people. And so getting out on them trails, it helps you slow down with your family. My wife, when we got back, we looked like mud daubers. I mean, but we had a great time. My daughter, we all, we just had a great time together.
Right. There's a peace to being out in nature, isn't there?
Yes.
Again, Representative Chris Fugate of the 84th District, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with us here on Caucus Connections.
Thank you, John.
You've been listening to Caucus Connections. Tune in next week for another episode from the House Majority Caucus.